I'm Dr. Christopher Barker. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in New Jersey, and welcome to Holding Space. I'm doing kind of a off-the-cuff podcast for tonight because I've been working on writing a book. For those of you who have been following me on LinkedIn, and for those of you who know me, I talk an awful lot about complex trauma. A lot of people say, just stop talking about it. No, actually, they don't say that, but I mean, I hope they don't. At least not to me, but I think it's something that deserves talking about, and I'm taking a look at it from a fresh perspective. I know a lot of people have been talking about complex trauma for a while now. I originally ran across the idea when I was taking an EMDR training, and Ariel Schwartz, who is one of the leading authors on complex trauma, came up, and I started thinking about it, and I realized that there's so many dimensions to this. Trauma is not something that happens to you once or twice or three times. I mean, it can be. Those are called acute traumas, big T traumas if you're doing EMDR, but there are also small T traumas. Those are little things that really wouldn't be like a death or witnessing a murder or something horrible like that. But also, there is the sort of trauma that results from not knowing when the other shoe is going to drop. This can be a result of parental neglect. This can be a result of poor attachment. We talk about attachment theory a lot also. This can be the sort of trauma that comes from not being able to know when you are safe. So if you've not had the type of feedback from parents or loved ones or even people growing up that it's going to be okay. And I mean, people can grow up in war-torn areas with this. People can grow up in suburbia with this. So it is widespread. It is a human phenomenon. And I thought it deserved a book from a different perspective that sort of looks at it from a relational attachment perspective across how time influences it and relationships. So I want to tell you a story it's a personal story. I was having a medical procedure, and just before they put me out to sleep, I recall the doctor leaning over and saying, "We're going to take good care of you." Now, I thought that was kind of odd. He'd never shown any particular touchy-feely sort of like tender emotions before. I have it from someone who's in the medical field that, no, doctors do that sometimes if they think that people are upset about it. I wasn't particularly upset. I was already slightly medicated and not feeling particularly bad about this. But I woke up remembering that. And sometimes still, I can hear that. I feel that. It's become sort of, I don't know, it's become sort of a mantra that periodically I will say to myself, going to take care of you. It struck me some couple of years later, right after we first started talking about complex trauma, that maybe the doctor didn't say that at all. Maybe I said that to myself. Maybe that was a voice inside my head that was coming out when I was in that twilight zone state that you get right before you're under anesthesia. We want to know that things are going to be okay. And a personal note about me, my childhood was not that secure. It was really just my mother raising me. And we had a lot of instances of not knowing when things were going to be okay. A divorced woman raising a child on her own in the South is kind of a difficult thing. Well, actually anywhere still, but especially in the early part of the decade, I don't care to mention. But it was difficult. And I recognized that it was hard for her. And I recognized that sometimes she was not in a good mood. And it would have been probably so much easier for me if she had been able to relate to me that, okay, I'm having a bad day. Come here, give me a hug, and just go play. I just need a few minutes to pull myself together. But we don't often think about things like that, especially with children. We don't. We just kind of come in and treat them as if they know everything. They don't. We don't grow up knowing how to handle emotions. We don't grow up with an emotional vocabulary. We don't grow up with an understanding of adult feelings. And so when adults don't come through for us, or when we look to them for an answer, and they either through carelessness or neglect or outright hostility don't give it to us, we're always looking. We're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. We develop hypervigilance, sometimes hypovigilance. We can dissociate. We can have episodes in which we sort of like lapse into a state of anxiety and develop a sort of a semi-amnesic state. Sometime we'll have to talk about how memory works. But anything that gets in the way of the encoding of a memory sort of stays that way. It is lost. So when we dissociate in anxiety, we are losing information. I think there's a lot to this. I think and I'm just really done with chapter 1 so far, but I've got the whole outline of the book. And I'm really looking forward to telling you more about it. I've been cobbling together some things that I've been posting on LinkedIn. And if you're watching this on LinkedIn, hi. If you're watching this on other medium, well, you're going to see a lot of it here too, because I cover a lot of the same material. A friend of mine recently asked me, so what are you passionate about? We were talking about branding and how we develop a presence as a professional. And I had to think about it for a second, and now I have her answer. I'm passionate about trauma. It's so subtle in a lot of ways, but it's so important. And it's something that we really need to address. It's something that we need to be aware of. We need to be aware of the implications. I have some clinical vignettes in the book, and they're taken loosely from all disguised to protect the identity of the clients that I see. But one young man was telling me that due to an abusive situation at home, he grew up with a sense of having to prove that he's right, that having to prove that he's always secure. If anybody challenges him, he has to produce evidence, have the receipts, as the kids say these days. At least I hope they're still saying that. We have to compensate for what's missing. We have to compensate for the things that we were not given. We have to compensate for what we do not have. And while we're doing that, we have to look and wait for the danger. We have to wait for that all clear whistle. And sometimes it just doesn't come. There are people who go through their entire lives and they never hear the all clear. I had someone ask me recently, so they were working with a woman who was in her 70s and said, resolving trauma at this point, it doesn't undo everything that's happened and all those years of hypervigilance. No, it doesn't. But you can finally, through a therapeutic relationship, develop a feeling of safety with someone. And this can translate into other relationships that you have. If you get 10 more good years without waiting for that other shoe to drop, and that's worth it. That's worth the wait. So thank you for holding space while I ramble on about writing this book. It is a labor of love. It is something that means a lot to me personally, and it is something that reflects a topic I'm passionate about. Thank you for holding space. If you like this sort of material, please feel free to comment, hit like and subscribe. Follow us, and myself and guests will be coming on and talking about different topics. I have something coming up on creativity. I have a couple of more broadcasts on trauma and trauma-informed language. But until next time, thank you for holding space.